This is part 2 for page 277, the chapter test in the hard book. And here are some sample problems from that. First one we're going to do in this part is convert each measure. And so the page number that you're going to want to go to for the unit conversions is page 250 in the hard book. And what you'll find there, if we're going from quarts to gallons, is that there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. And so last time I had talked about this, I ended up telling you that there were 2 ways to solve these. You can either use proportions or you can use dimensional analysis, which is when you multiply by the conversion factor. And I like the multiplication of the conversion factor because it's what we use in 7th grade. And so the 17 quarts to gallons. So we want to cancel out the quarts. I'm going to start with the 17 quarts and write that as a fraction over 1. And then I'm going to take this unit conversion here and I'm going to write it in such a way to cancel out the quarts. So I'm going to multiply by a fraction to cancel out the quarts. So I want 4 quarts down below so that the quarts will cross cancel. I want 1 gallon on top. And so I'll go ahead and do some work there, and I'm going to end up canceling out these quarts. Now notice that the 4 is in the denominator, 17 is in the numerator. This is a division problem. So with these problems, you're either going to divide or multiply. You'll multiply when the numbers are both on top of the fraction, divide if the number's on the bottom and one's on top. So I need to do a division problem off to the side because I'm left with 17/4 gallons. So I want to have a better understanding of that number. So off to the side, I'm going to go ahead and write down the 4 into 17. And I say it goes 4 times with 1 left over. So 4 and 1/4. So that would be my answer, 4 and 1/4 gallon. Let's take a look at another one here. This next set of directions asks us to tell whether the figures are similar. There's 2 criteria for it to be similar. And those criteria are, number one, we have to have the corresponding sides are proportional. And so what that means is that if we write a proportion, we're going to end up seeing if those two ratios equal each other. And so that's the first thing. Corresponding sides are proportional, and the corresponding angles, so the ones that are in the same spot, notice how the shapes are different size, but the angles, the corresponding angles, like these 2 angles here, P and T, they're both the same. Well, we want those corresponding angles to be equal. Corresponding angles are, we say congruent in geometry, but we'll just say are equal for now. So those are the 2 criteria. So the first one to always check off first is the angle one, because that one should be given to us. Notice how P and T, those are in the corresponding angles. They're the same type of angle, kind of the same positioning of our figure here. They're both 48, so that's good. 101 and 101, that's good. 86 and 86, that's good. 125 and 125. So it checks off. We know that the angles are corresponding. Now we need to check the sides. So let's take a look at the tough one first. This one here, 18 and 10.8. So let's write those out, 18 and 10.8. So what I need to do is I need to see what that ratio is in a simplified form. So the best thing to do is we could take out a common factor if you knew it. If you didn't, then you just have to do the division, and I think that's what most people would end up doing. So we'll go ahead and do that for right now. We've got 10.8, and I'm going to divide into 18. So what I'm going to end up doing is moving that decimal over 1 space. That means adding a 0 here. So I have to really divide 108 into 180. Well, it goes in there 1 time. I do some subtraction. Got to borrow a little bit. We end up with 72. Add a 0. That means we have to add a decimal point too. And we do 108 into 720. Well, it doesn't quite go in 7 times. It only goes in 6 times. So go ahead and do that math. That makes 48. And then we have a 4 left over. 6 times 0 is 0, plus 4 is 4. And then we have 6. So that makes 648. So we do the subtraction there. Again, we got to borrow all the way back from the 7. This is going to change to an 11. 11 minus 4 gives me 7. And look, lo and behold, I end up with another 72. So what that tells me is that I'm always going to end up with 6 repeating. So that number is going to end up being 1.6 repeating. That's what that fraction is. Well, that means all fractions should reduce down to this. Let's see if they do. Well, this next one is 10 and 6. Okay, so 10 over 6. Well, if I go ahead and reduce the fraction first, it might make the problem easier. So I'll take out a 2. I end up with 5/3. So off to the side, I got to do 5. See how many times 3 goes into 5. So 3 goes into 5 one time, and that leaves me with 2 left over. Do some more division there. Add the decimal point. 3 goes into 20 6 times. Oh, looking good so far. Yes, it's going to work because I get a 2 as a remainder again. So that means the 1.6 is going to repeat. So, yep, I got that same fraction there, 1.6. Look at the next one, 10 over 6. Well, yes, that's going to work. 10 over 6, it's the same fraction. So that definitely equals 1.6. So that's good. Last one, 15 and 9. So off to the side, we got 15 over 9. So again, reduce the fraction. Make it easier on yourself. And so maybe I can take out a 3 goes into both of these numbers. So I'll divide them both by 3. And so I have 5/3. Oh, that's the same thing I had here. So I did that division already. I don't need to do it again. 1.6 repeating. So notice all of those corresponding sides are proportional. They all equal the same number, 1.6 repeated. So that means that checks off. So you've got 2 things to check to see if they are similar or not. So in this case, 19 is a yes. Last one for this part, and then we'll have a few more problems in part 3, is this one asks us to determine what the unknown length is. So the key on this is to find the corresponding sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a proportion. What your teacher will call it as line equal sign line. And so you want to find out the side that is proportional, or that corresponds to n. So let's go ahead and, that's the one we want to solve for. Let's put that first, n. N is O-N or N-O. So let's look for those right here. N-O. Okay. See how those are the last 2 letters in this triangle? We want the last 2 letters in this triangle, and those 2 will be the corresponding sides. So YZ right here, 4 inches. That's YZ. So N and 4 correspond. Now we've got a choice. We just need to find 2 other sides that correspond. Let's take the smaller numbers. Let's take this one here. 5n, or 5 inches. So 5 and n are both in the same triangle. So I'm going to put them in the same spot in the fraction. 5 is going to go on top because n went on top. Well, 5 is MO. Okay, here's M and here's O. So I need the 2 that are on either side here. So it's not the one in the middle, it's the 2 on the side. So that means it corresponds to WZ. See how WZ are in the same spot as M and O? Well, that means that those are corresponding. So 3, that's the corresponding one. So you got to use this. Sometimes though, like in this case, what they did is they turned the triangle over, and they pivoted it around kind of that MO, and they turned it upside down. So sometimes they rotate them, and it gets a little bit more confusing. So it's real important to look at these letters that represent the triangle. Well, from this point, we use that cross-multiplying, cross products. So n times by 3, and then we do the next one, and that's going to be 5 times by 4. So we're going to set that equal to 5 and 4 being multiplied. And so we do a little bit more work there. And so we multiply this stuff out. We get 3n equals 20. And so then we just need to divide by 3 and come up with whatever number that represents. So off to the side, let's do the division. 3 into 20. Well, I know it goes 6 times. That makes 18. And we've got 2 left over, so we can just write it as a mixed number. 6 and 2/3. And these are what units? Well, inches. Those are the units we're dealing with here. Now there it is. So those are some of the problems you'll end up seeing. I got another part for page 277. You can see that in part 3.